built on relationships, focused on people, and rooted in the community. Welcome to the Build Blue podcast. Tune in for weekly episodes featuring guests who are building a better tomorrow. You'll hear inspiring stories from industry leaders, business owners, community partners, and our team members. The Build Blue podcast, where construction comes to life. An Apex Construction Group production.
Welcome to the Build Blue podcast. My name is Jess Blaze with Apex Construction Group, and we are joined today by Ceceli Polzin with the YWCA of Mankato. Thank you for joining us.
Well, this is really fun. Thanks.
It's fun to introduce you that way because this is a new role for you, and we're going to learn more about your background and your new role at the YWCA. But first, we ask everyone this question because it's so fun to hear where people started, like way back. What was your very first job?
You know, I was thinking about this on my walk over. I think my very first job was babysitting. And I think through all of that, I really aspired to be a teacher because I loved little kids. But my very first job where I actually got paid decently as a teenager was at McDonald's.
Nice.
Yeah.
Locally?
In St. Peter.
Okay.
I helped open that restaurant. I was heading into my senior year of high school, and I actually learned a lot of skills in that job.
I bet you did. A lot of people
if
skills.
You have time to lean, you have time to clean. Clean as you go. No, I would say people skills for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's learn a little bit more about you and your background before we get into your career.
I hate this question.
I know, it's a terrible question. Nobody likes it.
I mean, what a great question.
Thank you for asking.
So I grew up in St. Peter. We moved there when I was 7. My family is from the Indiana kind of region of the country. So that's, kind of where I've been. Professionally, are you going to edit any of this?
I sure can. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, we probably better. Professionally, I've always worked in Mankato, but I have continued to live in St. Peter. I have 4 children who I raised there. I have 2 stepkids that live in Wilmer. And my mom still lives in St. Peter, so my heart is here. But I've always had, as I said, I've always worked here professionally, and just have had some really amazing experiences in my career.
Yeah. So you were with the Mankato Clinic for 20 years.
I was.
And you just stepped into a new role. At the YWCA. You'll be leading the YWCA. So how did the time that you spent at the clinic prepare you for this role at the YWCA?
Yeah, prior to working at the Y, I was changing careers about every 3 to 4 years, and was very lucky to have networked and met people, and, that extended opportunities for me. In that regard, every position, that I stepped out of and then into, prepared me for the next venture. My time at the Mankato Clinic was quite honestly amazing. I got to do a lot of things. I supervised staff. I got to introduce the clinic to social media marketing. Probably the last 5 years of my career, 5 to 7 years, is what prepared me for what I'm able to do today. And that role was really focused on community relations and customer relations, and primarily, how we intersect with the community, and how is it that the Mankato Clinic can help with things that are happening in the community, especially with underserved and marginalized communities. And I learned a lot about what was happening in the Mankato area, and started, really visioning collaborations and commonalities in conversations. So, and I just hope to carry that through into my role.
Yeah. So the YWCA is doing incredible work in the community. Let's talk about the importance of that work.
So the YWCA's mission is eliminating racism and empowering women. And empowering women is something they always stood on. And I see our work as really. Let me just start here. I don't necessarily see our work as, operating in a silo. That we aren't, inventing all kinds of new work to eliminate racism, for instance, but that we are walking alongside our community partners who are doing that work and supporting them in that work. We're doing a lot of programming around girls and women's leadership. I do think that's our niche. I would love to see us move into supporting girls, young women, and women, emerging leaders, aspiring leaders, with a focus on mental wellness. That I think a lot of our programming talks about that, but we don't really focus on it as a support mechanism, and that's where I'd like to see us go.
Yeah, that would be incredible, because there is obviously a need for it, and it's refreshing to see that it's becoming a normalized part of the conversation.
Right.
But kind of where do you take it from there?
Right. And again, it isn't about recreating a whole new, part of business, that we're going to do, but working with community partners that are doing that work and embedding that into what it is that we're doing. So, my goal ultimately is to find ways for other nonprofits in the community to work together. We're all competing for dollars, but we each serve similar communities of people in different ways. But how can we all work together, to support that work? If it's work that is created to uplift people, we should be able to find ways to do that that are efficient and effective, and that the communities benefit from that.
That connection piece is so important.
Right.
You're quite engaged in our community. Let's talk about some of your volunteer contributions.
I think a lot of my time over the last probably 5 years have really been centered around underserved communities, communities of color, and how can I best support. I was very involved in food insecurity issues right before COVID, and then during COVID, there was a huge need, and so I participated in a big effort that continues today in St. Peter, and most recently was honored to be asked to help develop a diversity, equity, and inclusion collaborative through Greater Mankato Growth. And we just finished up with our first cohort who is so engaged. They continue to meet outside of that formal collaborative, and actually we continue the conversations about what that's going to look like in the future.
That's excellent and much needed in the community for sure.
Yes.
Let's talk about opportunities for the community to engage with the YWCA. I know you guys are bringing back the women's leadership, and Girls on the Run just had their annual 5K on Saturday. So ways to get involved, whether that be through sponsorships or other initiatives.
Yeah, that's such a great question. I know that organizations that rely on volunteers, for instance, are really struggling. People are reevaluating how to spend their time. And so I just need to better understand that. At the Mankato Clinic, we didn't use volunteers because we couldn't. We were not a nonprofit. And so I really didn't have to think about what that world looked like. But the lack of volunteers really does impact the type of programming we can offer. So I'm going to be doing some work around that. I want if someone comes to me and says, I want to get involved, I want whatever they want to get involved in to really fill their cup. I don't want it to be just something they do, right? So it's really learning more about, a group of people that want to be a part of what we're doing. Whether that's participating on a steering committee to bring the Women's Leadership Conference back to Mankato, whether that's being a running buddy at the 5K. And what was interesting about that is about a week prior to that event, we didn't have enough running buddies. The day of the event, we had more than we needed. And it was wonderful. But I think that sort of speaks to, this new normal for people who want to give up their time, right? So it's just learning more about that.
Yep.
And then plugging people into those areas that are going to be as beneficial for them as it is for our organization.
Yeah, absolutely. My very first volunteer contribution in this community was with the YWCA.
Really?
Yep. And it took me 2 years to fill out the application because I was so afraid they wouldn't want me. And then I coached Girls on the Run. And then
awesome.
From there, I became a member of the girls programming committee for many years. And so this organization is near and dear to my heart. I've since gotten involved in a lot of things.
Yeah.
But that was my very first.
That's
and
awesome.
I was so afraid that I was like, what if I fill out this application and then they say no?
Yeah, we wouldn't say no. Trust me.
No. And it was an awesome opportunity. And now, that was 13 years ago. So those girls are long graduated from high school and young adults.
That was my first experience as well. I coached my daughter's Girls on the Run team.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah, for 2 seasons, I think.
Yeah, and that starts in fourth?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And we're actually looking at how we can engage. I heard from several parents on Saturday, my daughter's graduating out of that program and, we don't have anything else for them to move into. And so we are looking at what that next thing might be for them. And, we don't, that 6th to 8th grade group really struggles with programming anyway, right? So I think that, that might be our next.
And that age is so important.
Yes.
And so tricky.
Yes. Agreed.
That it's important. But what about, let's talk, I don't have this on the list.
That's all right.
The Girls on the Run program. It's a national program, and so there is a curriculum.
Right.
Let's talk about kind of what that looks like for people who are listening who maybe have heard of it but aren't really familiar with the inner workings.
Yeah, it's a 10-week program. We run 2 seasons a year, one in the fall and one in the spring. The spring is when the YW has their 5K. In the fall, we piggyback on another group's 5K, and I apologize, I can't think. I think it's the Scouts. The Scouts.
Oh, okay.
And so, but it is a very, I would say, prescriptive program in that it does have curriculum, and each week they meet twice a week. They focus on very specific topics having to do with confidence building, some leadership skills, self-esteem, that kind of thing. They are actually in the process of updating their curriculum. I met with our liaison to Girls on the Run yesterday, and are building in some more relevant content that girls that age are dealing with today, having to do with mental health issues, bullying, those kinds of things. And so I was happy to hear that. I often wonder if we sort of gloss over some of those important topics because it's hard to talk about, right? And, I want to make sure that our volunteers are really comfortable, with that curriculum. But I think, actually, I would have been more comfortable with that content because it's getting to the root of what's happening.
Right.
We're not just pretending it's not.
Yeah, so absolutely. And you can teach self-esteem and leadership, but if there's mental health issues happening, none of that will be.
And it isn't about trying to fix someone's mental health issues, but, normalizing. I had an interesting conversation with a friend this morning about, let's talk about, ADHD and what I can do positively because I have it. I'm an idea generator. And I thought, wow, we don't even talk about,
Right.
things like that in that way, and we need to.
Absolutely. Just giving language to
Right.
to these young people.
That's
for
exactly right.
what their feelings mean,
Right.
or what they can do.
Yeah. Anxiety keeps you safe.
Yeah.
And and she said that, and I thought, well, yeah, that's true.
Wow. I know.
So, yeah, I think just, providing some language to kids who don't necessarily have that language. The other thing that I really love about Girls on the Run and other youth programming is, bringing together a group of girls that maybe don't spend time together during their school day, for instance, and hopefully building some trusting relationships that that may not carry on into the school day, but it may be a really important relationship to have at some point. That it's a relationship that's different, than they might have with their circle of friends, and so I think about how important that is and how we can continue to support that.
What about the Women's Leadership Conference, looking at returning in person this year for the first time since 2019?
2019.
Wow. It still blows my
I think
mind.
They tried to have an online version of it, but I'm still new.
You get to say that for like 18 months, by the way. I'm new. So what happens at the Women's Leadership Conference if any of our people have not attended?
Well, as far as I can tell, it really just is a day of, again, lifting up women who might be emerging leaders or aspiring leaders, just providing them with information that they can take away in a one-day format. It's different than our Leadership Institute, which is a 10-month program. And talking about important, relevant issues of today, right? So I have some ideas about what that might look like. I'd love to build some service into that conference this year, where our participants learn about the nonprofit world and what is being done in our community for the community. And so I'm pretty excited about that element. So lots of ideas. I'm pulling together the steering committee now, and it will be held in the fall.
Very exciting. And since you mentioned it, let's talk about the longer term leadership program. I have not had the opportunity to go through this program, but I have several friends who have, and they all come out with like kind of a life altering view or decision that they make.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Yeah. So it's a cohort of women that they apply to be a part of. And that cohort starts gathering in September and it runs through June. And every month, it's a full one day a month, and every month they focus on a topic. The overarching goal is to develop leadership skills, but it's different than it's different in a setting of women than it is in a mixed group of men and women, I would say. I've actually presented to that group for the last 5 or 6 years. And I even realize how I modify what I present, to that group of women as opposed to a mixed group.
Sure.
And so the goal is that they come out of that experience, again, having built relationships with one another, which definitely happens. And also, kind of creating a leadership plan for themselves. It isn't a plan that they're necessarily going to take into their business and, move mountains, right? But if that's what they want to do, we will fully support that. But, what is it they'd like to do from this point forward, essentially? And so we will have a retreat this month. It's May. And that's what they work on for the day is a leadership plan that they'll present to their constituents in June.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah. So those applications are actually open now.
Oh, great.
We will close the applications in mid-June and then start notifying participants right after that.
Exciting. And it starts in September.
It does.
Starts in September. I've always looked up to you as a professional woman in our community. So if you could go back, what advice would you give yourself when you were starting your career?
So Jessica's wonderful. She provides a list of questions, which I did not look at until 10 minutes before I came over here. I'll fully admit.
Oh, yeah. That's standard.
Yeah. And I saw that question and I thought, there are several pieces about this that are funny. A professional woman. No, I'm teasing. I think the thing that came to my mind right away was stop taking yourself so seriously. And stop taking your perception of what other people think about you so seriously. And I think at the point that I really started believing that, buying into that, was the point that I started feeling like I had something to offer. I always felt like there was something bigger waiting for me, but I could never quite get it. It just never quite clicked. And at the point that I recognized I just needed to trust myself, trust my instincts, and trust that what I was saying mattered, even if I was sitting in a room where it was apparent nobody else believed it, right? Then things started changing for me, and it really had more to do with me than anyone else. So I guess that's really, it in a nutshell.
Mic drop. I love it.
Well, and you hear people talk about that, right?
You do.
I mean, I'm living proof of it. And, I also am a personality. I've often joked that, there was a period of time where I could visibly see the life being sucked out of the room that I entered, right? Because I wanted people to pay attention to me. I wanted them to hear what I had to say. And I don't know that I have a vastly different view of that now. It's just my approach in that, right? And so there were things that I had to be honest with myself about. If I want, to be heard, being the loudest one in the room isn't necessarily the way to go about that. But making sure that I'm heard. So how does that happen, right? Also, I recognize not everyone is going to agree with my point of view. And that's okay. We get a lot of stuff done in the midst of those conversations, if we can at least have a conversation about it, right? So, that's also something I've really had to become more aware of. So, I would not make a good politician, however. I mean, I'm just saying that.
It's not in the cards.
Let's be clear.
Oh, this has been great. Is there anything you'd like to add about the YWCA? Anything that's upcoming that people should know about?
I think, just pay attention to us. The team is new, fairly new, and, we're all finding our way right now. But I really sense from each and every person, that's working there, that they have this strong desire to impact the communities that they serve. And so I'm going to support that. And, we're going to get some stuff done. So just watch. And if you feel inclined, get involved. And, feel free to reach out and provide ideas and money. You know, we're a nonprofit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on the podcast. Thank you for the work that you're doing for the YWCA. It's very exciting.
This was fun.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Fun. Thank you. You can listen to the Build Blue podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, and you can find us on YouTube as well. We'll be back next week.